אוויר הרים צלול כיין, וריח אורנים, נישא ברוח הערביים, עם כל פעמונים. ובתרדמת אילן ואבן, שבויה בחלומה, העיר אשר בדד יושבת, ובליבה חומה. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. איך יבשו בורות המים, כיכר השוק ריקה, ואין פוקדת הר הבית בעיר העתיקה. ובמערות אשר בסלע, והלילות רוחות, ואין יורד אל ים המלח בדרך יריחו. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. אך בבואי היום לשיר לך ולך לקשור כתרים, קטונתי מצעיר בנייך ומאחרון המשוררים. כשמך צורבת השפתיים כנשיקת זרה, אם אשכחך ירושלים אשר כולה זהב. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור.
הייתי בפריז וגם ברומא, ראיתי את שבעת פלאי תבל, בקוטב הצפוני וגם דרומה, אך אין מקום כמו ארץ ישראל. וכמו גלויות של נוף יפות, תמונות בזיכרוני עפות, כמו בעד עדשה של מצלמה, ותרמילי אותן אסע לכל מקום בכל מסע, קטעי פסיפס מתוך תמונה שלמה. שלום לך ארץ נהדרת, עבדך הדל נושא לך שיר מזמור, גם אם לעתים נודד אני על דרך, מה טוב לנדוד אך טוב יותר לחזור. פרחי המגדלים בירושלים, בסמטאות השוק הצבעוני, גגות הרעפים של גבעתיים, הניבטים מבעד חלוני, את האביב בתל אביב, את סבתי ואת סבי, את החלב ואת נרות שבת, את ים המלח מול אדום, ואשת לוט צופה לסדום, ואת הקיץ אורחה לאט. שלום לך ארץ נהדרת, עבדך דל נושא לך שיר מזמור, גם אם לעתים נודד אני על דרך, מה טוב לנדוד אך טוב יותר לחזור. מימיה הכחולים של הכנרת, והרקיע התואם מעט, והרגשת הבית המוכרת, בתוך אורכי זורמת כמו חשמל. הרי גליל והשומרון, הפרדסים שבשרון, וילדים בגן המושבה, את הכרמל ואת הים, אחד אחד ואת כולם, תמיד קורצים אומרים ברוך הבא. שלום לך ארץ נהדרת, עבדך דל נושא לך שיר מזמור, גם אם לעתים נודד אני על דרך, מה טוב לנדוד אך טוב יותר לחזור.
שאמא בהנה יפה וצעירה, אז הבעל גבעה בנה לבית. חלפו העבידים חצי ועברה, את כלכלים הפכו שיבה בינתיים. אבל על חוף ירדן כמו מאומה לא קרה, אותה הדומיה וגם אותה התפאורה. חורשה באקליפטוס הגשר הסירה, וריח המלוח על המים. חורשה באקליפטוס הגשר הסירה, וריח המלוח על המים. בשביל הנה יורדת ענת התינוקות, הם בירדן ישכשכו רגליים. גדלו הילדים וכבר למדו לשחות, ובני הנעורים חוקרים בשניים. אבל על חוף ירדן כמו מאומה לא קרה, אותה הדומיה וגם אותה התפאורה. חורשה באקליפטוס הגשר הסירה, וריח המלוח על המים. חורשה באקליפטוס הגשר הסירה, וריח המלוח על המים. מעבר לירדן רמו התותחים, חברון, היו לאנשים, ושוב על הגבעה הקימו בית. אבל על חוף ירדן, כמו מאומה לא קרה, אותה הדומייה, וגם אותה התפאורה. חורשת האקליפטוס, הגשר הסירה, וריח המלוח על המים. חורשת האקליפטוס, הגשר הסירה, וריח המלוח על המים.
ועל העוקץ, על המר והמתוק, על ביתנו התינוקת שמורי לי הטוב, על האש המבוערת, על המים הזכים, על האיש השב הביתה מן המרחקים, על כל אלה, על כל אלה, שמור נא לי הטוב, על הדבש ועל העוקץ, על המר והמתוק, על נטע קור נטוע, אל תשכח את התקווה, השיבני ואשובה אל הארץ הטובה. שמורי לי על זה הבית, על הגן, על החומה, מי יגון מפחד פתע וממלחמה. שמור על המעט שיש לי, על האור ועל הטף, על הפרי שלא הבשיל עוד ושנעשה, על כל אלה, על כל אלה, שמור נא לי הטוב, על הדבש ועל העוקץ, על המר והמתוק.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Hakham Melech ben Coughing Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im, and welcome to today's Torah study. As you can see, I still have a little bit of a cough. No biggie. Shabbat Shalom, Suriel. Shabbat Shalom, everyone else. And we'll probably go a little bit shorter today because we're starting a little bit later. So that's what we're going to do. I would like to tell everybody about Your Jerusalem. As I've mentioned it now, I'm really trying to get the newspaper going again. So I published Your Jerusalem. Let me just share the screen. I published Your Jerusalem. I actually bought it from some close friends of mine. One close friend of mine. The other one was not a close friend. He was a friend of a close friend. Back in the late 1990s, there was an actual print newspaper. We came out on a regular basis, and we published about 20,000 copies per edition and distributed them, all over Jerusalem and the surrounding areas. We got to Bethlehem, and Hebron, which were both in Israeli hands. at that time. It was before the stupid self-destructive government of Israel gave those places away to the enemy. And so, it lasted for about 2.5 years. And since, unfortunately, I have never been a very good businessman, this was like my project. This is my this is what I really dedicated. Oh God, this is what I really dedicated my time and effort to. And then after about 2.5 years, I just couldn't keep it supported financially anymore. Again, I'm not a very good businessman, never have been. That's life. But I always said after that, I'm going to get it back going again. And over the years, I've kind of fiddled around with it. I put it online. I published an article here. I took an old article here and there from the print edition and put them online, such as my friend Suri's favorite article, which actually, before I ever met Suri, and I won't give away any of his personal information, we had written this article about how the West basically decided to destroy what was then Yugoslavia and break it up and take away lands that traditionally belonged to non-Muslims and give it to Muslims, or use that basically as an excuse to break the place up. So we won't get into it now, but at any rate, so after October 7th, oh my God, after October 7th, I really felt the strong desire again. As I said, it's been online for years now, but I put an article here, an article there, but I felt the strong desire to get it up and running again in a big way. And that's what I've been doing lately. So there are a bunch of new articles on there, and I really think it's going to be a great newspaper. I mean, it always was, but I think hopefully now I will have the time to be able to really get back into it. And so please spread the word about it. It's yourjerusalem.org. And the name of the newspaper is Your Jerusalem. I called it the newspaper of Israel's future. That's what I actually called it back then. Because, you'll read the articles and you'll get the idea of its editorial policy. It's not a Karaite newspaper. In fact, I'm trying to specifically avoid any Karaite issues on the newspaper. I mean, there are some Karaite leaning stuff, such as an article, if I can find it here. Where'd we go? Archives. There it is, Your Jerusalem Archives. Oh my God. Such as this, about the Jewish calendar drifting off track, and how certain groups had started going out of their way to observe the new moon in Israel, and in some cases, such as the Karaites, or some of the Karaites, to keep the holidays according to this new moon, although not all the Karaites do that. Many of the Karaites still follow the rabbinical calendar, or the Egyptian Karaite modified version of the rabbinical calendar. We won't get into that right now. Anyway, but it is definitely not an explicitly Karaite newspaper. I'm trying not to make it that. It's certainly, there will be some kind of things that, are Karaite leaning, I would say. But it's really meant to be a newspaper that, gives a wide variety of views of people who have a very good vision of where Israel is now and where it's heading towards the future, which is why I call it the newspaper of Israel's future. So please get the word out. Let your friends and family know. And there is a Facebook page for it as well. So if you look up Your Jerusalem newspaper, there's a Facebook page, so you can like it, etc. Okay, so that's that. That's Your Jerusalem. Oh my God. Cough sounds bad, but it's really not as bad as it sounds. It's just, I have a lot of gunk in my throat, and so it's causing me to cough. And it just won't go away. I've had this cold since the beginning of January. and it just refuses to give up. And I actually did something I rarely, if ever, do, which is I went to a doctor last week just to have it checked out because, I don't know, for the most part, I believe just in healthy living. But I had a doctor check it out because it's been lasting so long, and he listened to the lungs, and he said, no problems there, just, it'll eventually disappear. But I'm still waiting. Anywho, so much for that. So I don't really have that much to say as a monologue today, except that, is it me, or does anyone else out there really feel like the world is really, really, really messed up? I mean, I sometimes feel like I just want to hibernate in a corner somewhere and not interact with the world at all. I mean, aside from, there are nice people out there still, but there's just so much corruption and so much evil out there, so much spitting in Yahweh's face everywhere you go. It's just, I feel like we're in the time of the flood or something like that. And I ask myself every day, just how much longer can this go on? And at the same time, I try not to jump on the end of days bandwagon, because so many people do that. And over the years, so many people have done that, and it causes all kinds of strange movements to rise, such as Christianity. Christianity was essentially an end of days, or an eschatological movement. That's the fancy word for end of days movement. Jesus basically preached that the end of days was nigh. It's coming soon. The temple would soon be destroyed. It was actually, but that did not lead to some kind of messianic era, right? So that's why you get the weird Christian schism where they say the Messiah did come, but he didn't really do what he was supposed to do, so he's coming back, and all that nonsense. But there have been many other movements over the years. The Sabbateans, the Shabtai Tzvi movement in Turkey, and a lot of other places. In the 1500s, I believe it was. No, later than that, 1700s. I can't remember offhand. But a number of years ago, when I was in Istanbul, I met with someone who is a researcher about the Sabbateans, and he gave me a lot of very interesting information about them. And they still exist. They're still an underground sect in Istanbul, in Turkey, believe it or not. But many people are so desperate for times to change that they will jump on end of days bandwagons. And I really try to avoid that, because I've seen the flaws of that in the past. I mean, for thousands of years, everyone's been sure the end of days is right around the corner, and it hasn't been. So who knows if it is or not? But boy, oh boy, the world is really a screwed up place. And certainly, as usual, Israel's at the center of all the excitement. Shabbat Shalom, Desiree. Israel, the whole thing that's going on in Gaza, and the various countries that are lining up against Israel, those that are pretending to be on the side of Israel, such as the United States of America, which has actually probably done more damage to Israel in the Gaza war than the Hamas has, to be honest. And that even Israel's known enemies, such as Iran and Hezbollah, no, it does speak about a day. It does speak about, days when, the wolf shall lie down with the lamb, and nations will not raise their swords against each other, and a descendant of David will be on the throne again. No, there certainly is a kind of, I don't know if I'd like to call it the messianic era, but a kind of end of days where the current mess in the world does end and some new era starts. There are many verses in the Tanakh that point to that. Any rate, so getting back to right, that is not Torah, that is Tanakh. There are some verses that may allude to it in the Torah, but yeah, so what's wrong with that? We don't only go by Torah. We're not Samaritans. The Samaritans only go by their distorted version of the Torah, slightly distorted version of the Torah. But we go by all of the Tanakh as Karaites. At least I do. Anywho, so I forgot what I was saying. But yeah, so I'm reluctant to jump on that end of days bandwagon, but boy, it really seems like things are messed up. And yes, it seems like once again, all of the nations of the world are turning towards Israel and going against them. Oh, and I was saying that our so-called friends, such as the United States, are actually our worst enemies because just like as I was saying before, what they did in the name of democracy to break up the former Yugoslavia, which was basically, a confederation of territories. I'm sure people can correct me on the details, but it was basically Serbia. It was basically greater Serbia. And the United States decided that that is not what they wanted. They wanted to break it up and sell off the pieces. And that's what they did. So once the United States becomes your friend, you're in deep trouble. And there's a famous quote by Henry Kissinger. And yes, he actually did say it. Let me see if I can find it. It is fatal. So let's see. So Henry Kissinger did, and I checked it out. He did say it was quoted in here. They mentioned Wall Street Journal article where he's quoted saying it. So that's pretty good source. It may be dangerous to be America's enemy, but to be America's friend is fatal. And so Israel is finding that out. I always knew this for years, and many people in Israel who are, more aware knew this for years. But even America is coming against Israel at this time. They're not helping Israel. If America had stayed out of the way, we would have plowed Gaza into the ground months ago. But America is actually holding Israel back from reaching its true potential and its true goals. It's almost like being in a relationship with, with a sociopath or with a narcissist, where they are actually interested. They pretend they're your best friend, but they're actually interested in preventing you from reaching your potential. But and America has a vested interest in preventing Israel to reach its potential, whether they know it or not. If Israel rises, then that's the end of America's rule over this world, hegemony over this world. So America has to keep the current era going as long as possible because they're the kings of the current era. But this role or this position is slowly slipping out of their hands. And there are many people or many countries who think they're going to be next, right? China thinks it's going to be next. Maybe India. I don't think India does. They want to be part of it, but they don't think they're going to be next. Maybe Russia does. I'd rather Russia be next than the United States remain where it is. At least Russia has traditional values. The United States is, I don't even know what that country is anymore. It's like a 300 million people wide Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, obviously a lot of people that oppose it. Well, let's say 150 million Sodomites and then 150 million normal people. But at any rate, so if America falls, there are many other cultures, nations vying to be next. I guess China is the most visible one. But, what will happen is in God's hands, not in China's hands, not in America's hands, not in anybody's hands. And it's very possible that if things go a certain way, that the next era will be the era of Israel. And when I say the era of Israel, I don't mean the current secular state. I mean a true Torah-based state of Israel, kingdom of Israel, that is not, sucking on the toes of the West, bowing down and kissing the feet of the West, and is not overrun by Pharisees / rabbis / Talmudists, or as my friend likes to call them, rabbino-fascists, but a real Torah / Tanach state that many of us, including many people in Israel, whether they know it or not, dream about and long for. So we shall see what happens. So that's that. Oh boy, I wish I would stop coughing. But again, it's not as bad as it seems, to be honest. It's just I have a lot of liquid in my throat, and it just is causing coughing. But I'm really not that sick. As I collapse on the floor. Okay. All right. So all that being said, Joe Biden will say, "Oh, sure, will sacrifice Jews to win an election." Oh my God. It's not even him. He doesn't do anything. He's just a it's like what was that movie, Weekend at Bernie's? He's like already dead, you know. He's just a corpse that they wheel around and, you know, tell him to talk. It's, you know, as so many people have pointed out, it's really just an extension of the Barack Hussein Obama administration. So yes, the third Barack Hussein Obama administration will certainly throw Israel under the bus, because Barack and his followers despise Israel. I actually wrote an article in Your Jerusalem talking about Your Jerusalem. I think it's still up there. Let me see if I can find it. Your Jerusalem. I think it was in Your Jerusalem. Wait a second. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. Let me see here. Is it op-ed? Let me see. No. Editorial? Let's see. No, maybe it's not here. Let's see. Let me do a search. Obama. No. No. I don't know. Maybe I didn't put it on Your Jerusalem. Thought I did. I can't remember where I put it then. That's weird. But basically, I should find it. But basically, I compared Obama to the new pharaoh mentioned in the book of Exodus. And let's look at that for a second. I'll just leave this open. So at the beginning of the book of Exodus actually starts with this. All right. So in Exodus 1:8, I don't like this translation. I like the more standard translation. And then let's look at the Hebrew. So get a more standard translation. So this is Exodus 1:8. Let me make this bigger. Okay, that's better. So Exodus 1:8 says, "Wa Hakham Melech Hadash al Misraim asher lo yad'a eth Yosef." There arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. And when Barack Obama became president, right when he was elected president, I wrote an article, which I don't know where it is. I can't find it. Basically saying that was Barack Obama, because Barack Hussein Obama was the first break ever in the history of the United States with what a president should be. And I'm not just talking about a white male, the fact that he was black. He wasn't even black. He was half black, whatever he was, a mulatto. But, you know, there are blacks out there, not too many in the United States, but there are blacks out there who are huge supporters of Israel. I don't know, Larry Elders, I think, comes to mind, you know, someone like that. Probably Clarence Thomas. But this guy, this Barack Hussein Obama, was the first president ever in the history of the United States to really be a hater of Israel. And when I say a hater of Israel, I don't mean a hater of the state of Israel, because obviously America was founded in 1776 and the state of Israel was founded in 1948. But I mean a hater of Israel, basically a hater of the Tanakh, the Torah. And I'm sure there were plenty of, you know, anti-Semitic presidents of the United States over the years. over the centuries. But it was kind of different. I don't know how to put it in words. They might have been anti-Semitic, but they were still well-based in the Torah, in the Tanakh. So I know, for instance, at, I believe all of them, the original Ivy League universities, I know at Yale, for instance, until I can't remember when, maybe the mid 1900s even, but maybe before that, it was mandatory. You could not graduate from Yale University without passing courses in biblical Hebrew. You basically had to be fluent in biblical Hebrew. So Obama was the first president ever to arise in the United States he really wasn't a Westerner, to be honest, right? He was something else. And he was like a, whatever, an African, something besides a Westerner. And so I compared him to this pharaoh that rose over Egypt. And I knew at that point that was the end of any true support that the United States would have for Israel. I mean, contrast that with his mom was rich white trash. Yeah. Went slumming with some, Kenyan or whatever. I don't know what she saw in him. Maybe because he had a big, hat. I don't know. We won't go in that direction. At any rate, so yeah. So contrasted with Donald Trump, right, who is a return to what traditional American presidents are, and look how supportive of Israel he was. He would have made a much better prime minister of Israel than Benjamin Netanyahu. That's for sure. Anyway, I've digressed into politics. I guess what I'm trying to say is that all of the nations of the world are now turning against Israel, are turning against Jerusalem, including those who claim to be Israel's BFFs, Israel's best friends, such as the United States of America. Shabbat Shalom, Yadin. And, watch out for your frenemies more than your enemies. At least your enemies are your enemies. But you don't know when someone comes along and says, oh, yeah, I'm your best friend. Maybe you should be a little bit careful. So I think Israel's biggest enemy is the United States of America for that reason. Biggest enemy. And of course, the United States of America is making a big mistake, because if you go against Israel, if you curse Israel, then eventually you will be cursed. And America is becoming more and more of a cursed place every single day. I haven't been there for years now, and I'm actually afraid to even visit the United States of America at this point. It's maybe I'm getting, a specific feed of news that's exaggerating that, but it just scares me. It just seems like the place is going to collapse or go into full-blown civil war at any moment. And especially in the big cities like New York, where my family is, I'm afraid to be there. I'm actually afraid to be there with all the crime, the immigrants, the illegal immigrants, the poverty, the chaos, the feeling that any moment it could descend into total, absolute chaos. It frightens me to be there. It really does. And I know there's so many, I grew up in New York before I moved to Israel when I was 25 years old. And, I know that New York is, love to say, it's the greatest city in the world. The greatest city in the world. It is a pile of shit. I've been in about 35 different countries in my life, okay, including so-called third world countries such as Morocco, Tunisia, I don't know, I have to think of some other one. And New York is literally the most disgusting city I've ever seen anywhere. If all the cities I've been in, I cannot think of another city anywhere that is more disgusting than, I can't pack a firearm. You're not allowed to pack a firearm in New York City. They want you disarmed so that the roving gangs of black thugs and illegal immigrants can attack you, because that's what they're all there for. They're just waiting for the day where they can rape, loot, and pillage, and take all the wealth away from those who built it up. Anywho, so New York is literally the most disgusting city I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean, I compare it to cities in Morocco, right? Marrakesh. I spent a lot of time in Marrakesh. I've spent probably about 6 months of my life in Marrakesh, and it's beautiful, and I feel safe walking around there at night. Yeah, you have a little petty crime here. You might have pickpockets, and it may be dirty in places, but I mean, I felt safe there. Even walking through the streets at 2 o'clock in the morning, I felt safe in Marrakesh, Morocco, in Casablanca, in Tunis and Tunisia. I felt safe walking any time of day or night. So, I mean, and New York, I don't know. Paris smells like a sewer. The famous sewers of Paris have risen above ground. I've never been to Paris, actually. Believe it or not, I've only been through the airport, so I have no idea regarding Paris. But I've been to many cities around Europe, and they're clean, they're safe for the most part, And New York is just it's a complete shithole. It's the most disgusting place I've ever seen in my entire life. It's frightening. It's a frightening place, even to visit. Anywho, I've digressed once again. Okay, so let's get into Torah. Yeah, exactly. If you go to places like, if you go to flyover country, then that's still nice parts of the United States. And that's why so many people are fleeing the big cities. So many, let's say, right-wingers are fleeing the big cities and going to places like Montana, Idaho, Wyoming. I have my good friend of mine who grew up in Connecticut, in Stamford, Connecticut, a suburb of New York City. And he fled about 10 years ago to Wyoming. He's now living in in the San Francisco Bay Area, up in the hills. Anywho, name any city in the United States that's safe. Let's see. How about Butt Cheek, Alabama, population 35. That's probably pretty safe. Okay. All right. Anywho, let's get. So talking about flyover country, we are now in what I like to call Torah flyover country. All these verses that everyone finds extremely boring. The details of building the tabernacle, the details of the priestly garments, etc. I personally find them fascinating. So we're in Exodus 30 today. In Torah flyover country. And we've got the details of the altar of incense and other aspects of the tent of meeting. The holy area and the Holy of Holies area. And then we have some more narrative. So, and the golden calf, which obviously is big stuff. So what I'd like to do, I think, today is start with something a little bit different. And then maybe we'll get into the more narrative parts of Exodus 32. Not that I don't like the other parts. I actually find them absolutely fascinating. But last year we spent a lot of time on them. And maybe we'll do something a little bit different this year. So I thought maybe we'd start in the Haftarah today, the rabbinical Haftarah. And yes, I do follow the rabbinical schedule for the simple reason that that's what most Jews around the world follow. And, just to stay in sync with them, since everyone's talking about this parsha this week in Jewish land. So, right, illegal migrants. Thank you, Yardain. I just stick to the rabbinical schedule. And that wasn't actually something I decided. That was something that when I and Yaakov ben Israel used to do this Shabbat class together, that was something we decided together. I think it was his idea. And I said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, just to stay, in sync with what most Jews are learning or considering on a given week. But there's nothing canonical about it. But about, going in this, following the schedule, just everyone else is doing it. So yeah, I'll join the bandwagon. So let's talk about this week's Haftarah, which is 1 Kings chapter 18. And we have the story of Elijah, maybe the most famous story of Elijah, where he basically has a showdown with the prophets of the Baal on Mount Carmel. Okay? So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's get a little bit of historical background. All right, so we'll go to Rabbi Wikipedia and just get a little background on some of the main characters here. So we've all heard of King Ahab, not the captain from from Moby Dick, but the son of Omri, who actually started a new dynasty in the Northern Kingdom, Omri. So sometimes it's called the dynasty of Omri. And this guy was bad, but he was even worse because of his wife Jezebel, who definitely let's put it this way, she was not she wasn't exactly the kind of wife who baked the Shabbat challah and said the bracha over the Shabbos candles. Not exactly. Okay, so Ahav. Just read a little bit here. So he was the seventh king of Israel, meaning of the split kingdom. This kingdom splits, we know, after Solomon, to the northern and southern kingdom. Southern kingdom is referred to as Judah, as Judea, or actually Judah at that point. Southern kingdom is referred to as Israel. The son and successor of King Omri, who was also not a very good dude, and the husband of Jezebel of Sidon. So where's Sidon? Sidon is, well, there it is. It's in Lebanon. It's a coastal city in Lebanon. Tyre, Sidon, and Byblos are probably the three most famous cities in Lebanon. And Sidon and Tyre, Sidon and Sur, that's Tyre in Hebrew, are mentioned many, many, many times in the Tanakh. Okay, so he was widely criticized for causing moral decline in Israel, according to the Yahwists. Scholars consider him to be him to have been a Yahweh worshiper. That might be true. And then it was his wife who, kind of convinced him to do bad things. Really, Jezebel was the real problematic one, but Ahab was not too great either. Okay, so the existence of Ahab is supported outside the Bible. Shalmaneser III of Assyria documented in 853 BCE that he defeated an alliance of a dozen kings in the Battle of Karkar. One of these was Ahab. He's also mentioned on the descriptions of the Meshasteel. Meshasteel is very famous. There it is. But we won't get into it now. So Ahab became the king of Israel in the 38th year of King Asa of Judah, and reigned for 22 years according to First Kings. William F. Albright dated his reign from 869 to 850 BCE. And other people dated it slightly differently. It doesn't matter. King Omri, Ahab's father and founder of the short-lived Omri dynasty, seems to have been a successful military leader. He's reported in the text of the Moabite Meshasteel, blah, blah, blah. Let's skip ahead. Ahab married Jezebel, the daughter of the king of Tyre. And First Kings 16 tells the story of Ahab and Jezebel, indicates that Jezebel was a dominant influence on Ahab, persuading him to abandon Yahweh and establish the religion of Baal in Israel. Ahab lived in Samaria, the royal city, so that was the capital of the northern kingdom, the capital of Israel. It's been excavated. It was a very large and important city. It was basically the counterpart to Jerusalem at that time. And built the temple and altar to Baal there. He additionally condoned Jezebel's anti-Yahwist purges. So Samaria, let's just do that for 1 second. So that's where it's located right there. And it has been excavated, as I mentioned. Ooh, we have to plug in soon. Okay, so we don't need to go onto everything, but we're going to be speaking now in 1 Kings 18 about this. Okay, so this is where Ahab has a throwdown with Elijah, Eliyahu the prophet. So the first encounter is with Elijah, who predicts a drought because of Ahab's sins. Because of this, Ahab refers to him as the troubler of Israel. We'll get to that. 1 Kings 18:17. The encounter ends with Elijah's victory over the prophets of Baal in a contest held for the sake of Ahab and the Israelites to bring them into repentance. I'll just read through these. The second encounter is between Ahab. So this is the 5 important encounters with prophets that Ahab has. Second encounter is between Ahab and unnamed prophet in 1 Kings 20. The third is again between Ahab and an unnamed prophet who condemns Ahab for his actions in a battle that has just taken place. The fourth is when Elijah confronts Ahab over his role in the unjust execution of Navot. This is where, at the behest of, this is a famous story, where at the behest of Izebel, Ahab there's a vineyard next to his palace, and he wants it, and Nabot owns it. So Jezebel suggests that he just steal the vineyard from Nabot, and he does so, and then kills Nabot. Famous story in the Tanakh. Upon the prophet's remonstration, has thou killed and also taken possession? A very famous verse in the Tanakh. Ahab sincerely repented, which God relays to Elijah. And then the fifth encounter, one of my favorite stories actually in the entire Tanakh, I don't know why I've always loved this story, is with Micaiah, the prophet who, when asked for advice to recapturing Ramoth Gilad, sarcastically assures Ahab that he will be successful. I don't think it was sarcastic, but that's another story. And Micaiah ultimately tells him the truth of God's plan to kill Ahab in battle due to his reliance on false prophets. And then Ahab dies in battle. And that's it. Okay. So let's go to this first one here, this first encounter with Elijah, Eliyahu, the prophet, in 1 Kings 18. I was an honorary mayor of Hell, Michigan. Is there really such a place? I don't know. Okay. So we are in 1 Kings 18. And let's see, maybe I'll start in English. And then when we get to Elijah, I'll switch over to Hebrew, because otherwise it will just take too long. So after a long time, in the third year, and that's the third year of Ahab's reign, the word of Yahweh came to Elijah. Go and present yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain on the land. So there was a drought. Now the famine was severe in Samaria, and Ahab had summoned Obadiah, his palace administrator. Obadiah was a devout believer in Yahweh. While Jezebel was killing off Yahweh's prophets, Obadiah had taken 100 prophets and hidden them in 2 caves, 50 in each, and had supplied them with food and water. Ahab had said to Obadiah, go through the land to all the springs and valleys. Maybe we can find some grass to keep the horses and mules alive, so we will not have to kill any of our animals. So they divided the land. They were to cover Ahab going in one direction and okay, let's get up here in the Hebrew. So this is 1 Kings 18:7. Switch over to the Hebrew here. Okay. Should I call you His Honor, the mayor? Okay, so 1 Kings 18. Oh, God. And we're picking it up in 11. No, in 7. So Obadiah is basically Ahab's assistant, his palace administrator. And here we have in 18:7. So Obadiah, and so there's a drought, the animals are starving, and so Ovadia and Ahav set out in different directions to look for some green places, kind of like an Aviv barley search, I guess, where they can get some food for the animals, some green grasses for the animals. So we pick it up in 1 Kings 18:7. Vayhi Ovadyahu b'derech. You know what? I'm going to just do the regular, more modern Hebrew accent today, just to make it flow a little bit faster. Vayhi Ovadia b'derech v'hine Eliyahu likrato. So Ovadia was on the road, on his way, and behold, he saw, doesn't say saw exactly, but implies it, Elijah was coming towards him. وَيَكْرَهُ وَيِپol al panav. And he recognized him, meaning Ovadiyahu, remember, we saw is a worshiper of Yahweh, right? He hid the prophets of Yahweh. So Ovadiyahu is a good guy. So he recognized him and he fell on his face, meaning bowed down before Elijah. Yomer atazeh adoni Eliyahu. And he said, is this you, my master Eliyahu, Elijah? Verse 8. Wayomer lo ani. And he said, it is I. Lech amor la'adonecha. Hine Eliyahu. Go tell your master. And by the way, master here is in the plural, just like when we say instead of God, the rabbis say Adonai. Actually, Adonai is mentioned many times in the Tanakh itself, but not as God's proper name, but they use it as God's proper name. At any rate, that's in the plural. This is also in the plural. So it shows there are some Christians who like to claim that because Elohim and Adonai are in the plural, that implies the Trinity, that it's speaking to more than one God. But here we see a proof against that, grammatical proof against that, that clearly Eliyahu is telling Obadiah to go speak to his master, Ahab, and it's still using the plural because it's the majestic plural. It's the plural is often used when you're speaking to someone of a certain status, like God or king. Again, the classic examples when the queen says, well, it's not more queen, I guess the king says, oh, we shall have tea now, and he means that he shall have tea, but he uses the majestic plural and says, we shall have tea. Same idea. Okay, so tell your master, meaning tell Ahab that here's Eliyahu, that Eliyahu is here. Verse 9, Wayomer, me chatati, ki eta noten et avdecha biyad Ahav lamiteni. Excuse me. And he says, Obadiah says to Eliyahu, to Elijah, how have I sinned, or what sin have I done? That you are handing me over, handing over your servant, meaning handing me over, Obadiah is saying, into the hands of Ahab for him to kill me. Right? So Obadiah knows that if he goes to Ahab and says he ran into Eliyahu, then Ahab is going to kill the messenger. Meaning Ahab is going to kill Ovadiah. Verse 10. Chai Yahweh Elohecha im yesh goy umamlecha asher lo shalach adoni sham livak eshacha v'amru ayin wa ishbia et hamamlecha wa et agoy ki lo yim tza'eka. Okay, so Yahweh Elohecha im yesh, as Yahweh is your God. There has never been, or has there ever been, a nation or a kingdom, asher lo shalach adoni sham, who had not sent my master there to search you out, v'amru ayin, and they said no. In other words, every time that Ahab has gone looking for Elijah, they've always come back and said they couldn't find Elijah, because they knew, anyone knows that if they come back and tell Ahab that Elijah's coming, then they're in trouble. Excuse me. השביע את הממלכה ואת הגוי כי לא ימצאך. And he made that kingdom or nation swear that they had not found you. So to make a long story short, Ovadia is very worried that he's now going to be the one to go back and say he's run into Eliyahu, and then Ahab is going to kill him. Verse 11. And now you're telling me to go to your excuse me. Oh, I have to plug in the second. And now you're saying, Lech emor la'adonecha hine Eliyahu. And now you're saying, go say to your master, here's Eliyahu. Okay. Verse 12. Wahaya ani elech me'itach waruach Yahweh yisa'ech al asher lo eda ובאתי להגיד לאחיו ולא ימצאך והרגני ועבדך ירא את יהוה מנעורי. Okay, so verse 12, והיה אני אלך מאיתך, and now it's again Ovadia speaking, and he's saying, I'm going to leave you, I'm going to go away from you. ורוח אלוהים יסעך על אשר לא אדע, and the spirit of Yahweh is going to carry you away to someplace, to somewhere I have no idea where it will be, a place I don't know. In other words, you're going to disappear. I'm going to now go to Ahav. Ahav has been searching you out. And now I'm going to go to Ahav, and I'm going to tell him that I found you. In the meantime, you're going to disappear to God knows where. Literally, God knows where. It says, and if I come tell Ahav that I've run into you, that I found you, and he doesn't find you, haragani, he's going to kill me. And your servant, meaning this is Ovadia saying to Eliyahu, speaking in humble terms, your servant, I, Ovadia, your servant, Eliyahu's servant, figuratively speaking, have feared Yahweh from my youth. Why are you doing this to me? Ovadia is saying, I've been a follower. I'm loyal to Yahweh, and now you're basically handing me over to my death by sending me to Ahav and having me tell him that I've found Eliyahu. Okay? Verse 13, I have to plug in a second. Hello. Hugad la'adoni et asher asiti b'harog Izevel et nevi'ei Yahweh wa'akbi min nevi'ei Yahweh 100 ish 50 ish b'ma'ara ve'achal kalem lechem wa'mayim. Has it not been told? So even more, even more, now Ovadia is saying when he goes to Ahav, hello, God Adoni, has it not already been told to my master, to Ahav, et asher asiti, what I did, Barogi Zevelet Nevi'ei Yahweh, when Jezebel was killing the prophets of Yahweh, V'achbi min Nevi'ei Yahweh, and I hid min Nevi'ei Yahweh 100 ish, I hid 100 prophets of Yahweh, 50 ish b'me'ara, 50 in two different caves, 50 each in a cave, and I fed them, or I provided for them food and water. Okay, so more than that, now Ovadia is even more fearful because he now knows that Ahav knows what he did to save the prophets of Yahweh when Jezebel was killing them off. So basically he saved the prophets of Yahweh. Ovadia did when Jezebel was going around killing them. He took 100 prophets, split them into two groups, 50, and hid them each in a cave. Verse 14, I'll do up to 15 and then I'll plug in. ואתה אומר לך אמור לאדונך הנה אליהו והרגני. And now if I go and I say, no, I'm sorry. ואתה אומר, now you're telling me, לך אמור לאדונך, go, tell your master, הנה אליהו, Eliyahu is here, and if I do that, he'll kill me. Verse 15. ויאמר אליהו, חי יהוה צבאות אשר עמדתי לפניו, כי היום אראה אליהו. And so Eliyahu responded, as Yahweh lives, that's basically him taking an oath in the name of Yahweh. That's the formula for taking an oath in the name of Yahweh. So as Yahweh lives, as Yahweh of hosts lives, Asher amati lefanav, who has stood before him, meaning before God. Ki hayom era'eh elav, or maybe for Achav, I'd have to look at that a little more closely, but it doesn't matter. That today I will appear before him. Okay, so basically Elijah says, "Don't worry, because I'm not going to disappear. I'm going to come and I'm going to appear before Achav today. So you don't have to worry. You, Ovadia, can go, and you're not going to get in trouble because I'm not going to disappear." Elijah tells Ovadia. Okay, all right. Give me 1 second. Let me just plug in, and I will be right back. I'm not going to turn on any music or anything like that. Yeah, I turned the sound off on purpose. I'm back. Plugged in. There we go. Oh my God. Okay, so that's the setup. So Ovadia is now going to tell Ahab, his boss, his master Ahab, King Ahab, that he's run into Elijah. Elijah's on his way, and Elijah's promised that he's not going to disappear, and that he's actually going to confront Ahab. And so this is the setup for the big showdown, the very famous big showdown between Ahab and the prophets of the Baal, I should say, and Eliyahu as the prophet of Yahweh on Mount Carmel. Where's Mount Carmel? It's basically Haifa. Okay. Modern day Haifa. Okay. So verse 16. So Ovadia went to Ahab and told him, and Ahab set out towards Eliyahu, towards Elijah. Verse 17. And when Ahab saw Elijah, Wayomer Ahab elau atazeh oker Yisrael. So this is a famous verse. So when Ahab ran and finally met Elijah, Wayomer Ahab elav, Ahab said to him, Atazeh oker Yisrael. Is this you? Is it you, the troubler of Israel? So Ahab is calling Elijah the troubler of Israel, right? Ahab is saying, Ahab is saying to Elijah, is this you, the troubler of Israel? Now, there's so much to say about this. And we know that the prophets never had it easy, because not one of the jobs, the main job they had was to tell the truth. I think they like to say, speak truth to power. I actually hate that expression, but it seems to be very popular these days, right? So their main job is to speak truth, and corrupt, people with twisted hearts do not like to hear the truth. Okay, if somebody went to Benjamin Netanyahu on October 6th and said your country is about to be attacked, I don't know if would he listen to them. No, he'd probably say the same thing. Why, is this you, the troubler of Israel? Hey, I got things worked out, man. I'm Benjamin Netanyahu. I know what I'm doing. I know how to wear a nice American suit. I know how to speak fluent English. I know how to think like a Westerner, act like a Westerner. I've been all over the world. I'm an important dude. I sit with world leaders. I just made peace with we made peace with the United Arab Emirates. And who else did we make peace with? I can't even remember. Bahrain? Did we make peace with Bahrain? I don't know. I got it all under control, man, because I'm a Westerner. I'm like a modern day Hellenist, and my way of thinking is superior, right? And you're coming along and telling me that I'm wrong? You're telling me my whole world is about to collapse? Hell no. There's something wrong with you. Maybe he wouldn't throw him in jail. He'd probably say, I'm going to have you sent to the mental institution. And I think that you have some mental issues. Maybe you're like a sociopath or a narcissist. And, we're going to have you taken care of there. Right. So you could definitely see this happening even today. Right. And this is exactly what the prophets of Israel had to go through. They had to constantly tell various kings and leaders and the common people that their world was soon going to fall apart, and they did not want to hear it. Right? They didn't want to hear that not only that the party was soon going to be over, but their entire worldview was wrong from the time they were youth up until now. It's basically like saying, your entire life is mivutal, is useless, is canceled. Your entire worldview has been wrong. So Netanyahu would have ignored it, I'm sure, as I believe is going to come out eventually that he did, or at least many of the higher ups did, right? Because there were warnings. We know about that before October 7th. And but if you don't listen to the prophets, that doesn't change the truth. The truth is going to eventually slap you in the face. The prophets are just the messenger. They're trying to help. If you don't want my help, then good luck to you, right? It's like if you go up to a drunk and say, you're going to hit rock bottom, and the drunk says, I'm fine, I can continue drinking. Okay, have it your way. It doesn't now, because the drunk doesn't listen to someone telling him the truth, does not mean that drunk is not going to hit rock bottom. The drunk will hit rock bottom, or the drug addict. It's the same thing. The prophets are just messengers, but the fact of the matter is that if you want to consider a person like Ahab or I don't know, Tzidkiyahu, Zedekiah, one of the last kings of Israel, of Judah to be exact, if you want to consider them like drunks or drug addicts, they didn't want to hear that the party was soon going to be over. But whether they want to hear it or not, the party's going to be over. And the prophets are just there to tell them the harsh truth. But people don't like to hear the harsh truth. They can react very violently, right? And that's exactly the response that Ahab gives or says when he sees Eliyahu. Is it you, the troubler of Israel? Eliyahu's the troubler of Israel? He's trying to save Israel. He's just telling the truth. Obviously, it's Ahab who's the troubler of Israel, as we shall see. So Elijah responds, and this is a man of truth. And men of truth are very brave because they know they have the truth behind them. So Elijah responds straight to Ahab's face, to the king's face. He said, I have not caused trouble for Israel, but it is you and your father's house who caused trouble for Israel. You and your father's house, you are the troublers of Israel, not me. Okay? In that you abandoned the commandments of Yahweh, and you went after the Baalim. You went after the Baal. You went after Baal worship. Okay? I'm not the troubler of Israel. You are the trouble of Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu, the soldiers that detected that something weird was going on the border, they're not the troublers of Israel. You, Benjamin Netanyahu, are the troubler of Israel because you abandoned Yahweh to go after your God, known as the West and the United States of America. And yes, you make a very nice looking Westerner. You have a nice suit, talk perfect English, but you are the trouble of Israel. And you and your ilk caused the death and injury of thousands of Israelis on October 7th. No surprise there. It was only a matter of time until the whole false, facade that you've built up over the years and decades was going to fall. It's not just Netanyahu. It's every single prime minister of Israel, probably from the beginning of the state, but let's say from Menachem Begin onward, who's given away territory and made what they call peace, but is really just temporary ceasefire with these so-called Arab nations, all of which, every single one of which, including our great friend Egypt, our great friend Jordan, will turn on Israel in the end and use all of the weapons and all of the training and all of the money they got from the United States and the West by making quote unquote peace. We'll use it all against Israel. They're smart. We're stupid. They live in the real world. We, like Ahab and like Benjamin Netanyahu, live in delusions. Okay. Let's go on. Verse 19, Wa'ata Shalach Kavod Selai Kol Yisrael. So now this is Elijah speaking to Ahab. He says, now go gather or send messengers. Doesn't say messengers there, but that's an implied object. So send messengers to gather to me all of Israel, El Har Carmel, to Mount Carmel. So gather all of Israel to Mount Carmel. Again, this is Elijah saying this to Ahab. Wa'et Nivi'ei HaBaal, and the prophets of the Baal, 450 prophets of the Baal, Nivi'ei HaAsherah 400, and 400 prophets of the Asherah. What is the Asherah? The Asherah it's a tree. It's basically, let's see here. Oops, that's what I meant. So it's basically a pagan fertility goddess, usually represented as a tree, because trees in paganism represent fertility because they bear fruit, right? Fertility, fruit, fertile. In fact, the word fertile very possibly comes from the word fruit. We can ask Dr. Isaac. Oh, he doesn't want to call Dr. Isaac Mosenson about that. Okay, we read that. Okay. Ochel Shulchan Izebel. Those who eat at the table of Jezebel. So a total of 950 prophets, 450 prophets of the Baal, 400 prophets of the Asherah. So the Baal is a male god of war and a god of the storms and war, usually represented by a bull. In fact, the word bull may very well be linked to the word Baal. And the Asherah is a fertility goddess, usually represented as a tree, because trees bear fruit, fertility, fruit, right? So we have the Asherah is often depicted as being married, being the wife of the Baal. So we have the prophets of the Baal and the Asherah. Okay. Any questions? Oh shoot, I haven't been sharing the screen. Darn it. You guys got to tell me. Let me share the screen again. Okay, can you all hear me? And can you all see the screen now? The way you're supposed to? The way you were supposed to? Everybody? Guys, can you hear me? Somebody? Give me some feedback. Okay. All right. If ever I do this again where you don't see the text on the screen when I'm reading it, please let me know. Just like if the sound goes off and I forget to turn it back on, please let me know. Okay, so here we are. We're in 1 Kings 18:19. So 950 prophets, pagan prophets, 450 of the Baal, 400, whatever it was. Okay, 400 of the Asherah and 450 of the Baal are now being called by Elijah to Mount Carmel, and they're going to have a big showdown. Verse 20, Vayishlach Achav b'chol bnei Yisrael vayikbotz et haniviim el har HaKarmel. So Achav sent word to all of the children of Israel, and he gathered together the prophets to Mount Carmel. Verse 21. Vaygash Eliyahu el kol ha'am. And Eliyahu approached all of the people. Oh, this is one of the most famous verses in all of the Tanakh. Okay, so 1 Kings 18:21. Wayomer. So Eliyahu now speaks before all the people that have assembled. Right, there's a big crowd. All of Israel have gathered to along with the prophets to see this big show. Okay, Wayomer ad matai, and he said to them, ad matai tem poschim al shtei asifim. So Elijah says to them a famous verse. Ad matai, until when? Atem poschim, will you tread, or will you, let's see, they translate it here. Falter? No, I don't like that. I guess they're related to Pesach. Let's see. It's not the way it's usually translated, but okay. Let's see here. Okay, fair enough. Atem poschim al shtei asifim. And I don't like the translation for that one either. 1 second here. Let me get a nice, good translation. It means like a threshold. Okay. See, fine. Divine opinion. I don't know. I don't like those translations at all. Let's see if we can get a Robert Alter translation on that one. 1 second. Oh God. No, not that way. Okay, so we got to go to 1 Kings 18. Yeah, that's much better. How long will you keep hopping between two crevices? I like that. Much better. And that's closer to actually what the words themselves imply. So let me just see what his comment is on that. And we're on page 2703. Oh, God. And I'll explain what his reasoning is for his translation in a second. But I want to get a good translation because it's such a famous verse and an important verse. In Tanakh, 2703, 2703. 1 second. 21. Okay. How long will you keep hopping between two crevices? This is obviously an idiom that means trying to have it both ways. The Hebrew noun has 3 different meanings. Sa'if can be a thought, a branch, or a crevice. This translation assumes that the idiom invokes a concrete image and opts for crevices because of the physical evocation of a person awkwardly jumping between 2 cracks in a rock. Right. And I agree with that translation. So poschim. So now let's go back to the Hebrew for a second. Okay. So poschim. So Elijah says, so again, Robert Alter's translation here is, how long will you keep hopping between 2 crevices? Okay. In other words, how long will you keep on trying to be on both sides of the fence at the same time? In Hebrew, it says matayatem, ad matayatem, until when? Atem, you. This is Elijah speaking to the prophets of the Baal and Asherah. Poschim. So poschim is from the same word as Pesach, Passover. In this case, poschim means to jump over, to skip over, right? Just like Passover, Pesach means to pass over. So usually it's translated as skip or tread, or I've seen it not as dance, but as, I don't know, I guess tread or skip. So how long will you skip? Ashtei sifim. A saif is like a gap or something like that. Well, we'll go with crevice, okay? So how long are you gonna try to hop back and forth on two sides of the crevice? Okay, that's the famous verse in Hebrew. But basically, and I'm sorry, this was not Elijah speaking to the prophets. It's Elijah speaking to all of the people of Israel who have gathered there to see the showdown. Right. So how long are you gonna tread on both sides of the fence? Are you gonna be on both sides of the fence? Basically, what he's saying to the people is make a decision. Well, he's gonna say it now explicitly. Right? He's saying you cannot have it both ways. You either worship Yahweh, you follow Yahweh, or you follow the Baalim. The two are mutually exclusive. You cannot do both at the same time. Okay? And that's exactly what Eliyahu says here. So we're now in 1 Kings 18:21. Im Yahweh ha-Elohim, lechu acharau. If Yahweh is God, then go after him. V'im Baal, lechu acharau. And if the Baal is God, then go after him. V'lo anu ha'am oto davar. And the nation, the people didn't answer him a thing. They didn't answer a word back to him. Okay? So Elijah is calling out the people. He's telling them, you've got to make a decision here. You can't have it both ways. It's kind of like Benjamin Netanyahu. He's kind of exactly like this, right? He wants to try to be Israeli, and at the same time, he wants to try to be American. Okay? He wants to have it both ways. He wants to be a Westerner, with Western values, and he also wants to be, an Israelite, a Jew with Jewish values, or the state of Israel. It wants to be a Jewish state and a Western democracy. You can't have it both ways, because if you have it both ways, you end up with nothing. And that's exactly what Elijah's saying to them. Okay, make your choice. You want to be Baal worshippers, go be Baal worshippers. But if you want to follow Yahweh, follow Yahweh. But you cannot have it both ways. The two are mutually exclusive. You have to make a choice. Okay, verse 22. ויאמר אליהו אל העם, אני נתתי נביא ליהוה לבדי, ונביאי בעל 450 איש. And so Elijah says to the people, Ani notati, I'm the only one remaining here as a Navi to Yahweh. I'm the only one here, and maybe what he means is, well, not all the other prophets of Yahweh have been killed off, because we saw that Obadiah had saved 100 of them. But I think what he means is there on Mount Carmel, I am the only prophet of Navi here on Mount Carmel. And there are 450 prophets of the Baal. Okay, so Elijah's saying it's me against 450, and we're gonna have a showdown. Elijah calls the prophets of the Baal into the octagon. Okay, verse 23. We nulanu shnayim parim ויבחרו להם הפר אחד וינתחוהו וישימו על העצים אש. So this is the contest. It's basically like a show of strength, or a contest of strength. So in verse 23, this is 1 Kings 18:23. Elijah says, let it be brought for us, or let it be given to us, two bulls. And let them choose the one they want. Okay, so two bulls are going to be brought. The 450 prophets of the Baal can choose the one they want. And let them chop it up to pieces, meaning bring it as an offering, as a sacrifice. And place it on the wood. But not light it on fire. So they're gonna butcher up the bull as a sacrifice, put it on the altar, on the wood of the altar, but not light. They're not going to light it on fire. They're not going to light the wood on fire. Okay, 1 second here, please. One second. Okay. And I'll take one bull, in other words, the one that's left over. And I'll do the same thing. I'm going to take the other bull. I'm going to place it on the wood pile, on the altar, with the wood, and I will not light it on fire. Okay, verse 24. And you call out in the names of your gods, call out to your gods, and I'll call out to Yahweh. And it shall be that the God that answers with fire, Hua Elohim, that is the real God. That is God. And all the people there answered and said, this is a good idea. Literally, this thing is good. Okay, so we got the contest set up. Hold on, I'm gonna get a little water to drink because my throat is feeling dry and coffee. Come on. If you stay still, no, you can't do that. No. Come, you're hungry, huh? Here, 1 second, guys. One of the cats a little food. Come here, you. A little bit. Here. Come here. Okay. Okay, so where were we? Okay, so we got the contest set up, right? The 450 prophets of the Baal, and of course Eliyahu is greatly outnumbered, right? But we see that numbers don't matter, right? Just like Gideon had to whittle his army down to 300 because it doesn't matter the quantity, it matters the quality. And this is a lesson we see again and again in the Tanakh, right? Sorry. And it's the same thing here. It doesn't matter that Eliyahu is one prophet. He's the prophet of Yahweh. And he may be against 450 prophets. But they're the prophets of a false god. So it's not quantity, it's quality. Right? A lesson we learn again and again throughout the Tanakh. Okay. So, where are we? We're in verse 25. ויאמר אליהו לנביאי בעל, בחרו לכם הפר אחד, ועשו ראשונה, כי אתם הרבים. So Elijah said to the prophets of the Baal, choose for yourselves a bull, one bull, and you go first, because you are the greater number. You have the greater number of prophets. I'm going to let you go first. וקיראו בשם אלוהיכם, and call out in the name of your God. ואש לא תשימו, but do not light the sacrifice on fire. Do not bring fire. Come here. Relax. Okay, so now this is actually the beginning. So before was the setup. We saw what the rules were going to be, and now it's happening. Now it's showdown time. Verse 26. ויקחו את הפר אשר נתן להם, and they took the bull which he gave to them, which was given to them, Yasu, and they prepared it. ויקראו בשם הבעל, and they called out in the name of the Baal, of Baal me'abokir v'ad tzorayim, from the morning until noon, or until the afternoon, really until noon. Lemor, Shoshi boy, you can't do that. Uh-oh, the cat's starting to go crazy. It's that time of day. Shoshi boy, what are you doing? Hold on a second. I may have to put it back outside. Uh-oh. I'm going to put it back. Come here. No. Nope. If any of you are cat people, you know that right around sunset, cats start going absolutely crazy. What is that called again, Volk? Crepuscle? What is it called when the animals that go crazy or most active at around sunset? Crepuscular? 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 So cats are crepuscular, which means they go nuts right around sunset. During the day, they could lie there all day in the sun like a lump. And then when the sun starts setting, oh my God, they go nuts, and they're pretty active at night as well. I'm sure you cat people there know that. Okay, so where were we? So they called out. So they prepared the sacrifice to the Baal, and they called out from the morning until the until the afternoon. Lemor, Habaal, Anenu. Mr. Baal, answer us. So they have the sacrifice. They're waiting for their god, the Baal, to send down fire from the sky, light up this offering, and prove that he's the true God, right? And there was no answer, no voice, and no answer. In other words, dead silence. And they started dancing around or leaping, skipping around on the altar that they had made. Okay, this is the same word we see here. Yipaschu. Okay, they skipped around or they danced around. Okay, it's the same word as we saw before. It's the same word as it's related to Pesach, Passover, right? So they're skipping around, just like Pesach means Passover, like skip over. So here they're dancing around, they're skipping around on their stupid altar, right? You know, like doing this like ecstatic dance, waiting for their god, their false god, the Baal, to come down and light their sacrifice on fire so they can prove to all the people gathered there that the Baal is the true God. Okay, and again, it's the same word that we saw in the famous verse above, 1821, was it, right? Let's read that again. Ad mataytem poskim shtei sifim. Until when will you continue to skip, to dance on two sides of the rock, on two sides of the breach, right? Make a choice. So I think the Torah loves word plays and loves repetitions of words. So I think this word here is used on purpose because it's the same word as here, where the prophets of the Baal are dancing on the altar. So you can see these 450 prophets of the Baal, you know, dancing around like is this ecstatic dance, you know, from the morning until the afternoon. They're dancing around like a bunch of idiots at the altar, and nothing's happening. There's no sound and no answer. The Baal is doing nothing. Verse 27. Wayehi b'tzoraim. So it was at noon. Wayehatel b'hem Eliyahu, that Eliyahu started to mock them, started to make fun of them. Uomer. So they're dancing around for hours now, and now finally Eliyahu starts to mock them. Right? You can picture the scene. These 450 idiots dancing around it's like a giant discotheque. They're dancing around the altar. Nothing's happening. The Baal's not answering. You know, the sacrifice is lying there dormant. Nothing's happening. No fire. No nothing. Uomer. And he said, "Kiru b'kol gadol, ki Elohimu." Kisiach v'kisig v'chiderech lo ulai yashen hu uyikatz. So call out to him more loud, in a louder voice, b'kol gadol, in a loud voice, ki Elohimu, because he's God. Kisiach, maybe he's busy talking to someone or meditating. Kisig, maybe he's busy. Kisiglo, maybe he's busy with something. Or maybe he's going somewhere. Maybe he's on the way somewhere. Maybe he's sleeping and you need to wake him up. Right? So Elijah's mocking them. Let's get a Robert Alter on that one. So it's 1 Kings 18:27. Oh, God. So this is Robert Alter on this. And it happened at noon that Elijah mocked them and said, call out in a loud voice, for he is God. Perhaps he's chatting or occupied or off on a journey. Perhaps he's sleeping and will awake. Okay, so Elijah's mocking these 450 prophets of the Baal dancing around on the altar. Nothing's happening. All of the people of Israel, I don't know about all, but many of the people of Israel have gathered there on Mount Carmel to see the showdown, and that's what's going on. Verse 28. And they called out they called out more loudly in a louder voice. Bitgodedu k'mishpatam b'charavot uberamachim ad shafach dam alehem. And they started litgoded, means they started lashing themselves or slashing themselves. It's one of the things that is forbidden. It's forbidden in the Torah. Let me see if I can find it. Oh. Deuteronomy 14:1. So I'll just do the English here. Okay, you are the children of the Lord your God. You shall not cut yourselves nor make any baldness between your eyes for the dead. Okay, so this was a common mourning ritual. To mourn, there were all kinds of different pagan rituals, and one of them was slashing yourself. Okay, so this is what they start doing here. They're basically gashing themselves, kamishpatam, according to their tradition, I guess you could say. Literally, it means according to their judgment, but it means according to their tradition, really. B'charavot, with knives or with swords. Ube ramachim. Ramachim is like I guess a lance or something. I usually translate it. Let's see. Here, and they called out, and they gouged themselves with swords and spears, as was their wont, till blood spilled upon them. Okay, so they're trying to get the attention of their God, as is the case in so many pagan religions, in so many ascetic religions. They think that by causing suffering to themselves, that this is somehow going to appease the gods. That's where you get ideas such as Molech worship, sacrificing your children to a god, sacrificing virgins to the god. That's where you even get asceticism, like Christian asceticism. The more I suffer, the more I will appease the gods. It's just a pagan idea, right? God does not want us to suffer in order to make him happy, okay, or to show our loyalty to him. He wants us to do good things, okay, not slash ourselves, not sacrifice our children, not sacrifice virgins or anything like that. These are all pagan ideas. The only time we're told really to sacrifice or to suffer is Yom Kippurim, and that's only for one day. And yes, it does serve the purpose of asceticism, but we see that it's a minor thing in Torah. It's not a major thing, as you see in pagan religions. And yes, there are fasts and ash and sackcloth. And yes, various prophets do things, such as Ezekiel, who ties himself up for 390 days on his left side, and then 40 days on his right side, and eats rations of bread and drinks rations of water. So yes, there is an idea of that suffering and asceticism somehow does appease the gods, but it's not a central point of Torah. It's used very sparingly. But here we see that these prophets, in a desperate attempt to appease their God, to get their God to respond to their desires, they're slashing themselves with knives and until blood is spilling down all over them. Okay, verse 29. Wahi ka'avor hatzorayim vayitnabu ad la'alot hamincha. So And so it was that the noon passed, and they continued prophesying. In other words, they continued doing all this stuff until it was time to bring the grain offering. And there was no voice, no response, or no voice, no sound, no answer, and and no attention being paid. Okay, in kashev. In modern Hebrew, maybe even in ancient Hebrew, I have to think about. But in modern lakshiv means to pay attention, listen, or pay attention. Okay, so basically, that's what's going on with the prophets of the Baal, the 450 prophets of the Baal. Verse 30, Wayomer Eliyahu l'chol ha'am. And now Eliyahu says, okay, now it's my turn. Elijah says to all the people, Gishu elai, gather close to me, gather around me, yikshu kol ha'am, and all the people gathered around them. Elau, wa yirapeh et mizbach Yahweh harus. And he repaired the altar of Yahweh that was destroyed. Okay, I'm assuming it was destroyed by the prophets of the Baal in the past. So he repairs the altar of Yahweh. Maybe we can get a comment on that. He mended the altar of the Lord. No, there is no comment there. Verse 31. Vayikach Eliyahu shtem asrei avanim k'mispar shivtei bnei Yaakov, and Elijah took 12 stones according to the number of the tribes of Israel. Asher haya davar Yahweh elau lemor Yisrael ye'eh shimecha. Okay, so this is actually a nice little interjection here. So according to the 12 tribes of Jacob, upon whom the word of the Lord came or was, saying, Israel yeshemecha, saying, Israel shall be your name. So this is just an explanation of a clarification, as if we didn't know who Jacob is, right? Jacob is the person to whom Yahweh came and said, Israel will be your name. Okay? Verse 32. Let me just drink. Vayivnet avanim mizbech b'shem Yahweh, and he built the stones into an altar to the name of Yahweh, or in the name of Yahweh. V'yas ti'ala kivet satim zera saviv lemizbeach. Okay, and he made a channel, a moat, kivet saatim. Sa'atayim zera saviv lemizbeach. Okay, like 2 seahs of seed. I got to get an explanation on that one. Let's see here. Wide enough for 2 seahs of seed. So seah is it's a dry measure in the Torah. Let's look that up. Okay. So 1 seah would be about equal to 7.3 liters. There we go. 2.0 US gallons. Okay, so it's here we go. Seah. So it's a unit of dry measure. The seah or seah, Hebrew seah, is a unit of dry measure of ancient origin found in the Bible and in Halakha, which equals about a third of an ephah or bath. In layman's terms, it is equal to the capacity of 144 medium-sized eggs, or what is equal in volume to about 9 US quarts, 8.5 liters. Its size in modern units varies widely according to the criteria used for defining it. Okay, so we get the idea. So basically, what we're seeing here is that he made a moat around the altar. Okay, That's the main idea here. We aroch et ha'etzim. We natach et hapar, and he arranged the wood on top of the altar, and he butchered the bull. We asem ala etzim, and he placed the bull on, and he placed it on the wood, meaning he placed the butchered bull on the wood. We omer milu arba'a kadim mayim, and he said, fill up 4 pitchers of water. Wa yitzku ala ola wa ala etzim, and spill them on the burnt offering and on the wood. We omer and he said, do it again, and they did it again, and he said, do it a third time, and they did it a third time. So basically, Elijah is now dousing the entire altar, the wood, everything, with a massive amount of water that's going to drip down into that moat, right? And the water went down or dripped down around the altar. Okay. And also he filled that the moat around the altar with water. So basically everything is drenched in water. What's the point of this? We shall see. All right. Any questions, any comments so far? Okay, let's go on. Verse 36. Wahi ba'alot hamincha wayigash Eliyahu Hanavi, and when it's time to bring the grain offering, wayigash Eliyahu Hanavi, then Elijah the prophet approached, meaning he approached the altar. V'yomer, and he said, Yahweh Elohei Avraham Yitzchak v'Yisrael, Yahweh, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Israel, Hayom Yiwada ki ata Elohim v'Yisrael. Today it will be known that you are the God in Israel. You are God in Israel. Va'ani abdecha, and I am your slave. I am your servant. Bidvarcha asiti et kol advarim ha'ele, and according to your word, or at your word, I've done all of these things. In other words, this whole contest and everything that Elijah's done, pouring all the water on the altar, is God told him to do. Yahweh told him to do. And now he prays. Aneni Yahweh, Aneni, we do ha'am azeh ki ata Yahweh ha'Elohim. Answer me, Yahweh. Answer me, and let these people know. Let this people know, ki ata Yahweh ha'Elohim, that you, Yahweh, are God. V'ta hasibota et libam achronit, and you shall turn their hearts back. Let's get a Robert Alter on that last part there, 37. And that it is you who turn their hearts backwards. Let's see if we can get a comment on that one, 37. The clause is ambiguous. It absolutely is, which is why I wanted to get his comment on it. It could mean, given the narrative context, it is you who made them again realize Yahweh alone is God. That's what I think. But backwards, horanit often has a negative connotation, true. So the clause can mean it was you who allowed them to fall back into idolatry, for God causes all things. Yeah, exactly. It could go either way. Let me read it again so I can parse it in my own head. Neni Yahweh, neni v'yedu ha'am hazeh ki ata Yahweh Elohim v'ata asibota et libam achoranit. Yeah, I don't know. It really could go either way. All right, 38. Watipol esh Yahweh, and fire from Yahweh came down with tuchal et olah, and consumed and burnt up the offering. What the eitzim, and the wood, wa et avanim, and the stones, wa et afar, and the dust, wa et mayim, asher b'ta'ala lechecha, and so burnt up the offering, the wood, the stones, the dust, or the leftover ashes, but the mayim asher b'ta'ala lechecha, and it licked up or evaporated the water that was in the channel. In other words, remember, here Elijah is doused everything with water. He's just one prophet. He calls out to Yahweh. fire comes down from the heavens and burns everything up, including the water that and dries up all the water, evaporates the water that he's doused all over the offering. The offering lights on fire, right? You get the idea. You get the scene. This is as opposed to the 450 prophets of the Baal who are dancing like, doing the funky chicken on the top of the altar from morning until the time of the mincha offering, until the time of the grain offering, and nothing was happening, right? Verse 39, we are kol ha'am, and all of the people saw, v'yiplu al pneim, and they fell down on their faces, v'yamru, and they said, Yahweh hua Elohim, Yahweh hua Elohim, and they said, Yahweh is God, Yahweh is God, Yahweh is the true God, Yahweh is the true God. Verse 40, Wayomer Eliyahu lahem, and Elijah said to them, Tifshu, et Nivi'e Baal, grab the prophets of the Baal, ish, al yemalet mehem, and do not let even one of them escape. Wayith pasum, and they grabbed them. Yoridem Eliyahu el Nachal Kishon, and he brought them down to the wadi, the Kishon wadi. Wa ishchatem sham, and he slaughtered them all there. So that was the end of the 450 prophets of the Baal. And where's the Kishon? So wadi in the plain of Megiddo. Okay. Let's just finish off chapter 18. ויאמר אליהו לאחיו, עלה, אכול ושתה, כי כל המון Hageshem. And Elijah said to Achav, go up and eat and drink. Ki kol hamon hagashem, because the voice or the cry has gone out for a multitude of rain. Let's get Robert Alter on that one, because that also is a little bit ambiguous. See his opinion on it. 41. Go up and eat and drink, for it is the rumbling sound of rain. Okay. Okay. Right. Okay, got it. Because there's a sound of much rain. Might be a better translation. Verse 42. So basically now the drought is going to be over. Remember, this all started with the drought. That's why Obadiah went out. Obadiah and Ahab and Ahab went out to look for grass to feed the animals, because there was a drought. They need to find a place to find grass to feed the animals. Now there's going to be a lot of rain because the show is over. Verse 42, and Achav went up to eat and drink. And Elijah went up to the top of the Carmel, of Mount Carmel. And he bowed down arza. He bowed down to the ground, and he placed his face between his knees. Wayomer el na'aro, and he said to his servant boy, Alena habit derech yam, and he said to his servant boy, go up and look out towards the direction of the sea. Again, where is Carmel? Carmel is basically Haifa. So let's look at that for a second. Oh God. Okay, good enough. Street Haifa. Oh, let's get it. Yeah, Israel. Okay, so jeez. Let's do this one. Okay. So let's take a look. Okay, so here's Tel Aviv, Netanya. There's Haifa, and Mount Carmel is right. It's basically, I guess, east, a little bit south, or this area right here is Mount Carmel. So this is where Elijah is. And he tells his servant boy, look out towards the sea. Okay, so look out towards the Mediterranean Sea. Over to the west, where we know that in the temperate zones of the north, that's where the new weather comes in from. Verse 44. And it was in the seventh time. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a verse. Verse 43. So the servant boy went up and looked towards the sea. And he said, I don't see anything. And he said 7 times, go back. So he made him go back 7 times. Verse 44. And it wasn't the 7th time. Said, oh, I see a little cloud. And I see a little cloud like the size of a man's palm or a man's hand. Coming up over the water. And let me just get translation on one part there for myself. 44. This is coming up. Yeah. Okay. Wayomer aleh, and he said, "Go up, emor el Ahab, and say to Ahab, Esor, ured, velo, ya'atzarcha hagasham." And he said, the sword means like, oh God, how do you say that again in English? To saddle your horses. Let's see how they translate here. Prepare your chariot. Second. Okay, so prepare your chariot. Literally like strap on. Oh, jeez. 1 second, please. One second. Okay, so like all right, we'll go with get your chariot ready, and come down and don't let the rain stop you. Verse 45. Verse 45. He adko wa adko wa shamayim itkadru avim veruach wa geshem gadol. Okay, so and it was adko adko. I guess it means he looked in this direction and that direction. Let's see how Robert Alter translate this. Meanwhile, the heavens happened. Meanwhile, the heavens. Okay, that's an interesting translation, but okay. He adko adko. All right. I think it means maybe he looked this way and that. Washamayim kadru, and the skies became dark. Avim with clouds, beruach, and there was a wind. Wahi gashem gadol, and there was a huge rain. Wirkav Achav v'yelech Yisraela, and Achav rode on mounted his chariot and went to Jezreel, the valley of Jezreel. Verse 46. Yad Yahweh hayta el Eliyahu, and the hand of God was upon Elijah. Wishanis matnav. Wishanis matnav, and he girded his loins. V'yaratz lifnei Achav ad bocha Yisraela, and he ran before Achav until he came to Jezreel. Okay, so now Elijah's going to have a showdown again, or he's going to meet again with Ahab. But we're going to end it here. That's the story that I want to go over. Okay, so that is the famous showdown between Elijah and the prophets of the Baal. Okay, and again, if we were to look at maybe the most famous verse there, it's 1 Kings 18:21. right? Where it says, Vaigash Eliyahu el kol ha'am, and Elijah approached all of the people, Yumer, and he said, Ad matai atem poschim al shtei ha'seifim. And he said, how, until when will you dance, or will you skip over two sides of the breach, two sides of the fence? Im Yahweh Elohim, if Yahweh is God, go after him. But Im Baal, and if Baal is God, then go after him. V'lo anu ha'am ato davar, and the people could not answer him a word. I think. Okay. All right. Let's take a break just for a couple of minutes. I'm not going to go for much longer. We'll go back to our parsha now for a little while. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about the golden calf, and then I'll probably end it within about a half an hour because my voice is also a little bit hoarse, as you can see. But let's take a break for about 5 minutes, and we'll be right back. Before I do, any questions, any comments? Get rid of this. We can get rid of this. No, that stays. That stays. We can get rid of this. Okay. So let me put music on for a couple of minutes, and then we will be back.
עושים שלום מכל חלון, כל הכבוד לכולם היו יודעים אז טוב מאוד. למי יש יותר כבוד, כולם היו יודעים אז טוב מאוד. למי תמיד למי יש יותר כבוד. וכשהקרב היה בוער והכיתה לא ססה, המפקד היה אומר אתה ראשון יא קאזה. כולם ידעו שקסבלן ראשון תמיד לצעוק, ומאחור הם צעקו כל הכבוד. כולם היו יודעים אז טוב מאוד, למי יש יותר כבוד. כולם היו יודעים אז טוב מאוד, למי תמיד למי יש יותר כבוד. אחד הולך עם בחורה ביפו בן 40, אם רק ארצה אצלי תהיה ישר בין הידיים, אך לא אפריע לבחור שלא יתחיל לראות, כי זה אצלי פשוט פרינציפ, יש כבוד. כולם היו יודעים אז טוב מאוד, למי יש יותר כבוד. כולם היו יודעים אז טוב מאוד, למי תמיד למי יש יותר כבוד. אם בשיכור לאיזה בר אני אותו מרגיע, עצמי מן השעון ישר בג'בליה, אבל אחר כך הוא חוזר ובקטן מאוד, מרים חסיד ועוד אומר כל הכבוד. כולם היו יודעים אז טוב מאוד, למי יש יותר כבוד. כולם היו יודעים אז טוב מאוד, למי תמיד למי יש יותר כבוד. כולם היו יודעים אז טוב מאוד, למי יש יותר כבוד. כולם היו יודעים אז טוב מאוד, למי תמיד למי יש יותר כבוד. יש! בחצי הלילה הם קמו והיכו בקצה העולם אבני רשף חשו הרחיקו להשיב את כבוד האדם אל ארץ היא, אל דבש שדותיה, אל הכרמל והמדבר, אל עם אשר לא יחשב שאת בניו לא יפקיר לשר, אל ארץ צבי שבהריה פועמת עיר מדור לדור, אל ארץ אם לטבורה קשורים בניה בטוב וברע. בחצי הלילה עוברת בשדותינו רוח שרה, ערבה אילמת תרכין אז ראש על אשר שחר לא שב, אל ארץ היא, אל דבש שדותיה, אל הכרמל והמדבר, אל עם אשר לא יחשב שאת בניו לא יפקיר לשר, אל ארץ היא שדמעותיה נושרות על שדה חמניות, שעצבונה וששונה הם שכיבה ערב בבגד יומה.
בלבם בנימה נפש יהודי הומיה, פתה מזרח קדימה, עין לציון צופיה, עוד לא אבדה תקוותנו, התקווה בת שנות 2000, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון ירושלים. להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון ירושלים. קולות בלבב בנימה, נפש יהודית הומיה, ולפתי מזרח קדימה, עין לציון צופיה. עוד לא עבדה תקוותנו, התקווה בת שנות 2000, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון ירושלים. להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון ירושלים.
Okay, welcome back. Let's get rid of this. Let's put that up. Let's get rid of that. Okay, we're going to go a little bit longer, maybe another 15 or 20 minutes, and then I'm going to stop. We'll talk a little bit about the Parsha. We won't do a Torah flyover country, as I like to call it. In other words, those parts of the Torah that most people find tedious and boring, such as the details of the building of the tabernacle, the details of the sacrifices, the censuses that are taken, let's say, at the beginning of the book of Numbers. I love all of these parts, and we've done them in the past, but I'm going to give you guys a break, and we'll go to the more narrative parts of the Torah. So we're going to go, that being said, we're now going to go to Exodus 31. Now we'll pick it up here, talking about the Sabbath, which leads into the golden calf. No, I'm going to start right here. So Moses is up on the mountain. Okay, verse 18. Let me open in the Hebrew. And just to put things in perspective, how did Moses get up on top of the mountain? Well, he was sent up in, oh boy, where was it? I'd have to go back. But remember, he went up for 40 days. Okay? So, all right, let's pick it up here. Moses receives the tablet. So, verse 18, Exodus 31:18. Waitin el Moshe, techaloto ledaber ito. So, he gave to Moses. He gave to Moses. Techaloto ledaber ito bahar Sinai. So when he's finished speaking to him on Mount Sinai, he gave to Moses Shnei luchot ha'edut, the two tablets of the testimony, of the covenant. Literally, it says of the testimony. Luchot even, tablets of stone, ketuvim ba'etzba Elohim, written with the finger of God. Okay? So what does that mean? That means that it seems to mean that literally God somehow, it doesn't mean literally he took his finger and wrote them, but somehow it was God who caused the inscriptions to be written on the tablets. Okay, let's see if we can get an interesting commentary on that. See what Robert Alter has to say about that one. So that's Exodus, where are we? 31, 18. Exodus 31. 31:18. So that's page 795. Okay, so what does Robert Alter say about this? The concise summary statement of this verse brings us back from the long dialogue of divine instructions, all that Moses was shown on the mountain during his 40 days, to the narrative situation that we left in chapter 24. So I guess it was Exodus 24, where Moses goes up to the mountain. Moses is now ready to come down to the foot of the mountain where trouble is already brewing. Yes, written by the finger of God. The phrase finger of God, previously used by Pharaoh's soothsayers, may suggest that God inscribed the stone tablets by tracing a finger over them without chisel or stylus. I don't agree with that. Scholars have proposed that behind this image lie both mythological and political traditions of the ancient Near East gods who inscribe human fate in that. Okay, forget all that. So he's saying that it's somehow literal, that an actual finger. I don't think that's the case. It's a phrase, and he does point us to the finger of God, and where that phrase appears earlier, and that would be in Exodus. So it was a third plague, so that's going to be around Exodus. Let me see, 3, 4, 5, maybe Exodus 5. No, Exodus 6. Oh, I can't find it right now. Finger of God. No. 7. Serpent, first plate blood. We're getting there. 8. Second plate frogs. Gnats. Here it is. So in the plague of the gnats, so remember for the first 2 plagues, the blood and the frogs, the Egyptian magicians were somehow able to replicate them, and that hardened Pharaoh's heart. Pharaoh then refused to let Israel go. Here in the third plague of gnats, of the gnats, or the lice, verse 19, el paro, and the magicians, the Egyptian magicians said to Pharaoh, Etzba Elohim, this is the finger of God. Chazek lev Paro, and this made obstinate the heart of Pharaoh, v'lo shama alehem, and he did not listen to them, kasher diber Yahweh, as Yahweh had spoken. Okay, so this phrase, the finger of God, is used here. The Egyptian magicians say to Pharaoh that this third plague, which they cannot replicate, which is above and beyond their pay grade, they say, the Egyptian magicians say to Pharaoh, this is the finger of God. So Robert Alter, incorrectly so, is saying that this somehow literally means here, when we see that similar phrase here. So here it says in Exodus 31:18 that it was Tuvim be'etzba Elohim, that these that the tablets were written with the finger of God. It's the same phrase. Be'etzba Elohim means with the finger of God. Here in Exodus 8, the Egyptian magicians say it's the finger of God. It's Elohim he. Okay? So Etzba Elohim means the finger of God. And Robert Alter is saying, well, this means somehow that there was an actual finger, let's say like the writing on the wall in Daniel, when Belshazzar is having his mishteh, is having his feast, or his how do you say mishteh again in English? It's a better word than feast, but we'll go with feast, where he brings out the vessels of the that had been taken from the house of Yahweh, from the holy temple, and he brings them out, and then there's a hand that writes on the wall, Mana mana takelu farsim, which means basically, to make a long story short, that his kingdom is going to be broken up. Okay, and Balthazar, the son of or maybe the grandson it was of Nebuchadnezzar. It says the son, but it might have been the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. Dies the next day, and his kingdom is taken over by the Medes, the Persians and the Medes. Okay. So, at any rate, where were we? So somehow it was written with the finger of God. I don't think this literally means a finger came down and wrote it, like not like the handwriting on the wall, the writing on the wall of the book of Daniel. What it means is somehow or another God caused this to be chiseled out on the stones. Who knows how? We weren't there. Okay. Okay. So now we have the golden calf. I'm going to go for another 10 or 15 minutes and then I'm going to end. So let me see if I can just run through this chapter with minimal commentary and just more or less, again, what I like to call super express mode. I'm just going to read the Hebrew. You can follow along in English or your favorite language. We are in Exodus 32, and you guys didn't tell me that I'm not showing it on the screen. Let's try that again. Now you should be able to see it. Okay, so we're in Exodus 32. And here we go. We are Kiboshesh Moshe redet min ahar, ויקהל העם על הרון ויאמרו אליו קום עשה לנו אלוהים אשר ילכו לפנינו כי זה משה האיש אשר העלנו מארץ מצרים לא ידענו מה היה לו. So they don't know where Moses is and they say we need a God who's going to lead us, who is going to lead us. Verse 2, because he's taking so long up on the mountain. He's 40 days up there. They don't know when he's going to come down. They think that's it. Moses is gone forever. Verse 2, ויאמר עליהם אהרון פרקו נזמי הזהב אשר באוזני נשיכם בניכם ובנותיכם והביאו אליי. So take the jewelry, the nose rings, and bring them to me. ויתפרקו כל העם את נזמי הזהב אשר באוזניהם. I'm sorry, not the nose rings, the earrings. ויביאו אל אהרון. Verse 4, ויקח מידם ויצר אותו בחרת. מידם יצר אותו בחרת ויעשהו עגל מסכה. So they made a molten calf. ויאמרו אלה אלוהי ישראל אשר העלוך מארץ מצרים. So this is your God who took you out of the land of Egypt. A lot to say about this, but again, I want to move ahead. So basically, they're saying this golden calf is the God that took you out of Egypt. This is Yahweh. This is now the representation of Yahweh. Because this guy Moses, who kind of was the physical embodiment of Yahweh's leadership over Israel, is gone. They need something physical, right? They need a daddy that they can see and touch, and and so this golden calf is going to fulfill that role for them. Verse 5, Yar Aharon, ויבן מזבח לפניו, ויקרא אהרון ויאמר חג ליהוה מחר. So Aaron is saying it's a festival to Yahweh tomorrow. Who is this Yahweh? The Yahweh is what's embodied by the golden calf. This golden calf is now the representation of Yahweh. So basically Aaron is saying this is now your God. This is Yahweh. It's bizarre. And if we had more time, we'd go into it a lot more, but it actually makes a lot of sense. Verse 6, וישכימו ממחרת ויעלו עולות ויגישו שלמים ושבע עם לאכול ושתו ויקימו לצחק. Verse 7, וידבר יהוה אל משה לך רד כי שחט עמך אשר העלית מארץ מצרים. So get down off the mountain, Moses. סרו מהר מן הדרך אשר ציוויתים, עשו להם עגל מסכה וישתחוו לו ויזבחו לו ויאמרו אלה אלוהיך ישראל אשר העלוך מארץ מצרים. So they've made this molten calf, and it's not called the golden calf here, it's called a molten calf. Masecha is a molten, in other words, it's all poured into a mold. A molded calf. And they're saying this is the God, this is Yahweh, the God that's brought you out of Egypt. So it's a physical representation of Yahweh. They're not saying it's a different God. They're saying that this golden calf, or Aaron is saying to them, this golden calf is the representation of Yahweh. And he's going to explain why he does this later on. ויאמר יהוה אל משה, ראיתי את העם הזה, והנה עם קשה עורף הוא. It's a stiff-necked nation. Wa'ata, meaning it's very hard to get them to change their direction, right? Their neck is stiff. Wata, literally, oref is the back of the neck. So the back of the neck is stiff. You know, if the back of your neck is stiff, you can't move your head, right? So it's like that. They can't change direction. They're stuck in their ways. Verse 10, let me get rid of them, and I'll turn you, and I'll turn you. One second, please. Okay. So I'll make you into another nation. I'll get rid of them and turn you into a nation. Verse 11. ויחל משה את פני יהוה אלוהיו, ויאמר למה יהוה יחרה אפך ועמך חרה אפיך ועמך ואשר הוצאת מארץ מצרים בכוח גדול וביד חזקה. So don't get mad at them. Okay? God wants to destroy that. Verse 12. למה יאמרו מצרים לאמור ברעה הוציאם להרוג אותם בהרים ולאכל אותם על פני האדמה שוב מחרון אפיך והנחם על הרעה לעמך. So don't kill them off. If you do, then Egypt is going to see, the Egyptians are going to see the Egyptians are going to see that you killed them off, and they're going to gloat, right? So again, we see Moses, as did Abraham with Sodom and Gomorrah, and as we see a number of times throughout the Tanakh, many times throughout the Tanakh, excuse me, for 1 second. 1 second, please. One second. Okay. So remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, asher nishbat alehem b'cha, daber alehem arbe, את זרעכם ככוכבי השמיים וכל הארץ הזאת אשר אמרתי אתן לזרעכם ונחלו לעולם. So God is using so Moses is using two logical arguments. First, shall we say the stick he's using against God. Egypt is going to see what happened, and they're going to mock you for killing off Israel. And then remember, and then the carrot. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So this is Moses' argument, okay? Verse 14. And God relented. So Moses has convinced God to change his mind and not kill off the people of Israel. How can God change his mind? How can a human convince God what to do? This is a long philosophical discussion, but let's say that the conception of God that Israel has, that Israel's approach towards God is very different from those of other nations where they think their gods are immutable and infallible and all of these kinds of things. Yahweh is, I won't say he's human, but he's an individual who can be spoken to, argued with, reasoned with. It's a long discussion, which we don't have time for right now. Verse 15, וירד משה מן ההר ושני לוחות העדות בידו, לוחות כתובים משני עבריהם, מזה ומזה הם כתובים. So he comes down with the two tablets, and they're written on each side of the tablets. And if we have more time, I'd tell you a funny story about how silly the rabbis are with regards to this, but we don't have time. Verse 16, והלוחות מעשה אלוהים. So they're the works of God, right? That's the same thing we saw above. They were written with the finger of God. Hema Michtav Elohim. The writing was the writing of God. In other words, it's implying that somehow God caused this. God wrote it, not directly, because God doesn't actually have a finger, but somehow He caused the tablets to be engraved upon. Hucharut al aluchot. Verse 17. Waishma Yeshua et kol ha'am bi're'o. Oh God. Same word here is tru'ah, like Yom Tru'ah. So he's heard the nation shouting. Sometimes Yom Tru'ah is called the day of shouting. Yomer el Moshe kol milchama b'machaneh. And remember, Yeshua had gone up, Joshua had gone up with Moses, and he says, the sounds like war in the camp. He thought there was a war going on. Yomer en kol anot gurav, en kol anot chalusha, kol anot anochi shomea. Which is a difficult verse to translate, but we don't have time to get into it right now. Verse 19. Wahi kasher karav el hamachane v'yar et ha'egel u'micholot v'yichar af Moshe v'shlech miyadao et haluchot. So this is where Moses he breaks the 10 tablets. V'shaber otam tachat ha'har. He breaks them at the base of the har, throws them against the base of the mountain. ייקח את העגל אשר עשו וישרוף באש, יבחן עד אשר דק ויזר על פני המים, וישקו את בני ישראל. So he throws it on the water. What water? What water are we talking about? Well, there must have been a water source there, right? We know that the Israelites clamored for water a number of times, first time in Rephidim. So what water source are we talking about? If we had more time, we'd go into that, but we don't. Verse 21. ויאמר משה אל אהרון, מה עשה לך העם הזה, כי הבאת עליו חטאה גדולה. So Moses is not blaming Aaron, he's blaming the people, that they basically convinced Aaron to do this. ויאמר אהרון, אל יחר אף אדוני, אתה ידעת את העם כי ברע הוא. So Aaron is saying, it's not my fault. Verse 23. ויאמרו לי, עשה לנו אלוהים אשר ילכו לפנינו, כי זה משה האיש אשר העלינו מארץ מצרים, לא ידענו מה היה לו. So we don't know that Aaron is saying, the people said, we don't know what happened to this guy Moses, and we need a God, a physical God that's going to lead us, that's going to go before us. Verse 24. ואומר להם למי זהב התפרקו ויתנו לי, ואש לי חהו באש ויצא העגל הזה. It's a kind of a funny phrase. I tossed the jewelry into the fire, and out came this calf. In other words, like Aaron is trying to say, like, I'm not responsible. It just kind of happened, right? So Aaron is, I think, a little bit scared and a little bit embarrassed, but he's explaining to Moses that he really felt he had no choice. Verse 25. ירא משה את העם כי פרוע הוא, כי פרעה אהרון ושמצה בקמיהם. Verse 26. ויעמוד משה בשער המחנה, יאמר מי ליהווה אליי, ויאספו אליו כל בני לוי. So all the Levites come to Moses, and they're going to take revenge on the rest of the nation for doing this. ויאמר להם, כה אמר יהוה אלוהי ישראל, שימו איש חרבו על יריחו, עברו ושובו משער לשער במחנה, והרגו איש את אחיו. So go from gate to gate in the camp. Gate? What gates are we talking about? So we see here that the word gate just means kind of like entrance, maybe, or section. There's no gates in a camp of tents, right? וירגו איש את אחיו, ואיש את רעהו, ואיש את krovo. So each person kill anyone who's taken place with this in this golden calf worship. Verse 28. יעשו בני לוי כדבר משה ויפול מן העם ביום ההוא כ3,000 איש. So 3,000 people were killed by the Levites on that day. Verse 29. ויאמר משה מילאו ידכם היום ליהוה כי איש בבנו ובאחיו ולתת עליכם היום ברכה. So Moses is basically praising them for killing even their own children and their own brothers for engaging in this idol worship. Verse 30. ויהי ממחרת, ויאמר משה אל העם, אתם חטאתם חטאה גדולה, ואתה אעלה אל יהוה אולי אכפרה בעד חטאתכם. So you've committed a great sin, and I've got to go back up to God and see if I can get forgiveness for you guys. Verse 31, וישב משה אל יהוה ויאמר, אנא חטא העם הזה חטאה גדולה ויעשו להם אלוהי זהב. So now Moshe is pleading their case. ואתה אם תישא חטאתם ואם אין חני ואם אין מחני נא מספרך אשר כתבת. Either forgive these people or erase me from this book which you have written. Which book that you have written? What is Moshe talking about? That also is a long discussion which we don't have time for today. But I would say it means like this book that you are writing. Verse 33, ויאמר יהוה אל משה, מי אשר חטא לי אמחנו מספרי. And Yahweh agrees, and he says, I'll just erase those people who sinned from my book. Verse 34, ואתה לך נחה את העם אל אשר דיברתי לך. So, הנה, מלאכי ילך לפניך. So lead the people, continue leading the people to the land of Israel, and my angel will go before you. וביום פקדי בקלתי עליהם חטאתם. And I'll take revenge on them as I see fit, to kind of sum up that. ויגוף יהוה את העם על אשר עשו את העגל אשר עשה אהרון. And so there was a plague among the people. Okay, that's Exodus 32. One second. Oh, yeah. Okay. So that was Exodus 32. We're supposed to get up to 34 through the end of 34, and that is not going to happen. Although this is really fascinating stuff. The glory of the Lord descends into the tabernacle, and Moses gets the new tablets, and there's a renewal of the covenant. And then Moses comes down with his rays of lights or horns, depending on whether you're an anti-Semite or not. And that's the end of Exodus chapter 34. So we're going to end it here today. It's been also a pretty long study. Amazing they so quickly disobeyed. Yeah, Am Kashe Oref, they're a stiff-necked nation. Stiff-necked nation. And that's, I always remember one second, where is it? I can't find it now. I can't find it. All right. Yes, they disobey very quickly and they get punished many times, and they end up spending 40 years in the desert. Not because of this sin, because of the sin of the spies, but they're leading up to it. And they're really, pissing God off again and again and again. It says 10 times you have tested me, right? So it's not an easy nation to deal with. I know, having lived among them much of my life, that Jews are not easy people to deal with. Except for me, I'm very, very easy to deal with. I'm the only one. No, I'm joking. I don't know. Maybe I'm not easy to deal with either. I try to be, but sometimes I'm not. Okay, anywho, that's that. We're going to end the study here. And thank you all for joining me. We will pick it up, Be'ezrat Yahweh. We'll pick it up again next week. Hopefully, this cough will be gone, although it's been going on for a long time. But I did see a doctor. He said nothing's wrong. I never go to doctors, but I decided just to have it checked out because I've never had a cough last this long. But that's the way it is. Any final questions, any final comments before we end? If not, then we'll end it. Please get the word out about the study. Share, like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff that really, gets the word out. I have a feeling I'm being shadow banned on Facebook and YouTube. but who knows? Who cares? Whatever. Okay, let's go out with some music. And I wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov, depending on where you are in the world. And we will pick it up at Hashem. Pick it up next week. Let's see if we can find some nice music. Okay, that's a good one. Let's do that one.
Im Hashem lo yishmori, shov kachoyme. Im Hashem lo yirne bayis, shalom lo boyna boy. Im Hashem lo yishmori, shov kachoyme. Im Hashem lo yirne bayis, shalom lo boyna boy. Im Hashem lo yishmori, shov kachoyme. Hine lo yonum velo yishon, lo yonum velo yishon, shoymei Yisroel. Hine lo yonum velo yishon, lo yonum velo yishon, shoymei Yisroel. Hine lo yonum velo yishon, lo yonum velo yishon, shoymei Yisroel. Hine lo yonum velo yishon, lo yonum velo yishon, shoymei Yisroel. Hashem lo yivne bayis, shalom lo boyna boy. Im Hashem lo yishmor yid, shov kachoyme. Im Hashem lo yivne bayis, shalom lo boyna boy. Im Hashem lo yishmor yid, shov kachoyme. Im Hashem lo yivne bayis, shalom lo boyna boy. Im Hashem lo yishmor yid, shov kachoyme. Im Hashem lo yivne bayis, shalom lo boyna boy. Im Hashem lo yishmor yid, shov kachoyme. Hine lo yonum velo yishon, lo yonum velo yishon, shoymei Yisroel. Hine lo yonum velo yishon, lo yonum velo yishon, shoymei Yisroel. Na 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 lo yonum velo yishon, lo yonum velo yishon, shoymei Yisroel. Hine lo yonum velo yishon, lo yonum velo yishon, shoymei Yisroel. La 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 la. Lo yonum velo yishon, lo yonum velo yishon, shoymei Yisroel. Hine lo yonum velo yishon, lo yonum velo yishon, shoymei Yisroel. Lo yivne bayis, shalom lo boyna boy. Im Hashem lo yishmor yid, shov kachoyme. Im Hashem lo yivne bayis, shalom lo boyna boy. Im Hashem lo yishmor yid, shov kachoyme. Hine lo yonum velo yishon, lo yonum velo yishon, shoymei Yisroel. Hine lo yonum velo yishon, lo yonum velo yishon, shoymei Yisroel. Na 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 na.